When I opened my eyes in that sterile hospital room, the beeping monitors fading into the background, the nurse handed me a phone and said my husband had something urgent to tell me, something about our house being gone. I remember the way the fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a cold glow on the white sheets tangled around my legs. My body ached from the surgery, a dull throb in my abdomen where they'd removed the tumor, but that pain was nothing compared to the confusion settling in my chest. I'd been in the hospital for 3 weeks, fighting through chemo sessions that left me weak and nauseous, the smell of antiseptic clinging to my skin like a second layer. My husband, Robert, had visited every day at first, bringing wilted flowers from the corner store and sitting by my bed with that forced smile of his, the one that crinkled his eyes but never reached his voice. "You're gonna be fine, Ellen," he'd say, patting my hand gently, his fingers calloused from years at the construction site. But lately his visits had shortened, excuses about work piling up like the unread magazines on my nightstand. That phone call changed everything. His voice on the other end was steady, almost businesslike, as if he were discussing the weather. "I sold the house, Ellen. It was the right thing. We needed the money for your treatments." I gripped the receiver tighter, the plastic cool against my palm, and felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. Our house, the little 2-story on Maple Street, with the creaky porch swing where we'd spent countless evenings watching the sun dip behind the oaks. It wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was the life we'd built over 30 years, the place where our daughter Sarah had taken her first steps, where we argued and made up, where the kitchen still smelled faintly of the apple pies I baked every fall. How could he sell it without me? I whispered questions into the phone, my throat dry from the medications, but he cut me off with assurances. "Trust me, love, it's for the best." When the line went dead, I lay there staring at the ceiling tiles, counting the specks to keep the tears from falling. Empathy for my own fragility hit me hard. How had I become so vulnerable that my world could slip away while I slept? But to understand the depth of that betrayal, you have to go back to before the illness, to the rhythm of our normal life, the one that felt so solid until it cracked. Robert and I had met in our early 20s at a community dance in our small town of Willow Creek, population just shy of 5,000. He was the quiet type, with broad shoulders and a laugh that rumbled like distant thunder, and I was the girl from the farm, practical and warm-hearted, always with flour on my apron from helping my mother in the kitchen. We married young, built our home with a loan from his parents, and raised Sarah in a bubble of stability. Mornings started with the aroma of fresh coffee brewing in our old percolator, the kind that gurgled and spat as it heated. I'd shuffle into the kitchen in my robe, the linoleum cool under my bare feet, and find Robert already at the table, newspaper spread out, his reading glasses perched on his nose. "Mornin', hummin'," he'd murmur, not looking up but sliding a mug my way. I'd add a splash of milk, stir it slowly, the spoon clinking against the ceramic, and we'd talk about the day ahead. His job sites, my shifts at the local library where I shelved books and recommended romances to the elderly patrons. Sarah was the light of it all. At 28 now, she lived 2 hours away in the city, working as a teacher, but she called every Sunday without fail. Her voice on the phone was like a balm, full of energy and stories about her students. "Mom, you wouldn't believe what little Timmy said today," she'd laugh, and I'd picture her dimples, so like her father's. Family dinners were sacred when she visited. Roast chicken with herbs from our garden, the scent wafting through the house, steam rising from the potatoes as I mashed them with butter. Robert would carve the meat with precise strokes, his knife scraping the cutting board, and we'd sit around the oak table he'd built himself, passing dishes and sharing the small triumphs of the week. There was comfort in those routines, the way he'd squeeze my shoulder as he passed behind my chair, or how I'd catch him humming old country tunes while fixing a leaky faucet, tools clattering in the sink. Our friends were part of that fabric too. The neighbors, like old Mrs. Hargrove next door, who'd wave from her garden with dirt-smudged gloves, or our church group where we'd gather for potlucks, the hall filled with the chatter of voices and the clink of forks on plates. Life wasn't perfect. Money was tight sometimes, with Robert's work seasonal and my part-time job barely covering extras, but we managed. We'd argue over little things, like his habit of leaving boots muddy in the hall, the earthy smell lingering until I swept them out, or my tendency to worry over bills, stacking them neatly on the desk with a sigh. But those spats ended with apologies, a hug in the dim light of the living room, the clock ticking softly on the mantel as we settled into forgiveness. Then came the diagnosis. It started with fatigue that wouldn't lift, no matter how much I rested on the worn couch, the fabric soft from years of use. Doctor's visits turned into tests, the waiting room air thick with the scent of stale magazines and anxiety. When they said cancer, the word hung in the air like smoke, and Robert held my hand, his grip firm but his eyes distant, as if he were already calculating the costs. He promised to handle everything, the insurance papers, the household chores, while I focused on getting better. "I've got this, Ellen," he said, his voice low and reassuring, kissing my forehead with lips that felt cooler than usual. I believed him, leaning into that familiarity, the way his cologne mixed with the faint odor of sawdust from his clothes. Little did I know, as I packed my hospital bag with trembling hands, folding nightgowns neatly, that the foundation of our life was already shifting beneath us. The days in the hospital blurred into a haze of IV drips and nurse checks, the beeps and footsteps a constant soundtrack. Robert's visits brought updates, bills paid, lawn mowed, Sarah sending love, but there were subtle shifts, the way his phone buzzed more often, him stepping out to answer with a mumbled excuse, or how his hugs felt hurried, his arms loosening too soon. I chalked it up to stress, the weight of it all pressing on him like it did on me, until that phone call. The first real crack appeared about 2 weeks before the surgery. I was sitting up in bed, weak but finally able to keep down a little broth, when Robert came in carrying a single red rose in a plastic cup. He set it on the rolling table, kissed my cheek like always, but his eyes wouldn't settle on mine. They kept flicking toward the window, toward the parking lot, anywhere but me. "You're quiet today," I said, trying to keep my voice light. He rubbed the back of his neck the way he did when the foreman asked for overtime he couldn't refuse. "Just tired, hun. Long day." Then his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and silenced it so fast I barely caught the name, K Realty. My stomach tightened, but I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he'd been talking to the insurance people, maybe a billing office. I was too foggy from pain meds to press. That night, I couldn't sleep. The hospital corridor lights glowed under the door, and every time a nurse passed, the rubber soles squeaked like small animals. Around 2 in the morning, I reached for my own phone on the bedside table. Robert had left it charging for me. The screen lit up with a notification I hadn't seen before, an email from our bank. Large withdrawal approved. My heart started thudding against my ribs. I opened the banking app with fingers that felt thick and clumsy. There it was, $42,000 transferred out of our joint savings 3 days earlier. The memo line read only R. Ellis, escrow. Escrow. The words sat in my mouth like a stone. We weren't buying anything. We weren't selling anything. We were barely keeping the lights on with my medical bills rolling in. I stared at the ceiling until the sky outside turned the color of weak tea. When Robert arrived the next morning with a coffee for himself and weak tea for me, I was sitting up, arms folded over the thin hospital blanket. "Morning, beautiful," he tried, leaning in for the usual peck. I turned my head so his lips brushed my cheekbone instead. "Robert," I said quietly, "why is $42,000 missing from our savings?" The cup in his hand trembled just once. Then he set it down carefully, like it might explode. "It's complicated, Ellen. I didn't want to worry you while you're recovering. Tell me anyway." He exhaled through his nose, sat in the plastic chair, and folded his big hands between his knees. "The hospital copay is higher than we thought. I took out a second mortgage on the house to cover it. That money is sitting in escrow until the bank finishes the paperwork." I searched his face for the lie and couldn't find it. His eyes were red-rimmed, his jaw unshaven. He looked like a man carrying something heavier than he let on. I reached out and covered his hands with mine. They were ice cold. "I'm scared," I whispered. "I know, baby, but I'm handling it. You just get strong." I let him kiss my forehead that time. I even managed to smile, because I wanted so badly to believe the man I'd loved since I was 21 was still the same man. But suspicion is a stubborn thing. Once it takes root, it sends out feelers in the dark. Over the next days, I started noticing smaller things. The way he no longer left his phone face up on the tray table, how he took calls in the hallway and came back smelling faintly of cold outdoor air even when the corridor was heated. Once, when he thought I was dozing, I heard him murmur, "No, she doesn't suspect anything. Yeah, I'll bring the rest of the paperwork tomorrow." My chest hurt worse than the incision. I began asking the nurses to help me to the bathroom even when I could manage alone, just so I could pass the nurses' station and use their computer for a minute. I logged into our county property records, thank God for public access, and typed in our address. Status, pending sale. Closing date, 9 days from today. Listing agent, Kendra Walsh, Coldwell Banker. The room tilted. I gripped the counter, the smell of bleach sharp in my nose, and felt the floor try to rise up and meet me. A nurse found me there, guided me back to bed, thought I was having a spell from the meds. I let her think it. That night, Sarah called. I hadn't told her how sick I really was. I never wanted to scare her. Her voice was bright, asking if she should drive up for the weekend. I almost broke down right then. "Sweetheart," I said, keeping my voice steady, "do you know anyone named Kendra Walsh?" A pause. "Yeah, she's Dad's old friend from high school. Why?" I closed my eyes. Kendra Walsh, blonde, loud laugh, used to come to our barbecues years ago before she moved to the city and got her real estate license. I hadn't thought of her in a decade. "No reason," I lied. "Just heard the name." After we hung up, I lay in the dark and listened to the heart monitor counting out the seconds of my marriage. The morning of the closing date, Robert didn't come at his usual time. 10 o'clock passed, then 11. My phone buzzed with a text from him. "Running late, love. Kiss you soon." At 11:47, the door opened, and there he was, freshly shaved, wearing the navy blazer he only pulled out for weddings and funerals. In his hand was a thick manila envelope. He smiled too wide. "Got some papers for you to sign, hun. Power of attorney stuff, so I can handle the refinance without bothering you." I looked at the envelope, then at him. My voice came out softer than I expected, almost gentle. "Robert, is the house already sold?" The smile froze. The envelope lowered an inch. "What?" "I saw the county records. Pending sale. Closing today." I watched the blood drain from his face. "Who's buying it, Robert?" He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "It's Kendra," he said at last, voice cracking. "She and we've been—" He couldn't finish. The room was so quiet, I could hear the IV fluid dripping. 1 drop, 2 drops, 3. "You've been what?" I asked, though I already knew. His head dropped into his hands. "It started a year ago. I was lonely, you were working late at the library all the time, Sarah was gone. Kendra reached out on Facebook. It was stupid. I was stupid." A year? While I was shelving books and planning his 60th birthday surprise, he was meeting his high school sweetheart in coffee shops and cheap motels. And the house? My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else, calm, far away. "It's Kendra's buying it from us. Well, from me, at a discount. She's going to flip it. The money will pay your hospital bills and leave us enough to rent a little place until you're better. I was going to tell you when you were stronger." I laughed then, a small, dry sound that hurt my throat. "You were going to wait until I had nowhere to go home to." Tears rolled down his cheeks, but I felt nothing. Not yet. The numbness was a mercy. "I love you, Ellen," he whispered. "I never stopped loving you. This was survival." Survival. I looked at the man I had slept beside for 32 years and realized I didn't know him at all. The truth spilled out of him like water from a cracked dam, slow at first, then rushing. He told me about the messages that started innocently, old friends catching up. Kendra had divorced her husband 5 years back, moved back to town quietly. Robert ran into her at the hardware store one afternoon, both reaching for the same paint swatch. Coffee turned into lunches, lunches into evenings when I was at book club or visiting Sarah. "It wasn't planned," he kept saying, his voice thick, hands twisting the envelope until the paper creased. "But with your diagnosis, the bills piling up, she offered to help. Buy the house quick, no realtor fees, cash under the table to make it stretch further." I listened without interrupting, the heart monitor beeping faster now, a staccato rhythm matching the pulse in my temples. The air in the room felt heavier, laced with the faint metallic tang from the IV stand. When he finished, head bowed like a penitent, I asked the question that had been burning since the bank email. "How much is she paying?" He mumbled a number, $280,000. Our house was worth at least $350 on the market. A discount, he called it? A steal, I thought. "And where were we supposed to live after?" My words came out even, but inside, something was unraveling thread by thread. He looked up then, eyes pleading. "She has a rental property, small apartment in town. We could stay there cheap until things settle." We, as if there was still a we. I nodded once slowly and held out my hand for the envelope. He hesitated, then passed it over. The papers inside were crisp, the kind with notary stamps and fine print that blurred under the hospital lights. Power of attorney for the closing. My signature would make it all legal, tie up the loose ends of our life with a neat bow for him and Kendra. "Leave," I said quietly. "Ellen, please." "Get out, Robert, now." He stood, blazer hanging loose on his frame, and for a moment I saw the boy I danced with all those years ago, uncertain and lost. Then he turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that echoed. Alone, the dam broke inside me. Tears came hot and silent, soaking the pillowcase. I clutched the papers to my chest, feeling the sharp edges dig into my skin through the gown. Betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was this, him dismantling our home while I fought for my life as if I were already gone. The smell of the rose he'd brought wilted in the cup, sweet turning sour. I thought of Sarah, oblivious in her city apartment, and my heart ached sharper than any surgical scar. But grief is a wave. It crashes, then recedes, leaving room for something harder. Anger,
resolve. By evening rounds, when the nurse came to check my vitals, her cool fingers on my wrist, I asked for a phone book, old-fashioned, but hospitals still had them. She brought one, puzzled, and left me to it. I flipped to the lawyers section, my finger tracing names until I found one. Margaret Hayes, family law, specializing in asset protection and divorce. Her ad promised discretion and strength. I dialed with steady hands. "Margaret Hayes speaking," a brisk voice answered. I took a breath, the oxygen tube hissing softly in my nose. "My name is Ellen Ellis. My husband is trying to sell our house without my consent while I'm in the hospital. I need to stop him." There was a pause, then the click of a pen. "Tell me everything."
I did, voice low to avoid the thin walls. She listened, asked sharp questions about the deed, joint thank God, the escrow, the affair. By the end, she was outlining steps: emergency injunction to halt the sale, freeze the accounts, petition for legal separation. "It won't be easy," she warned, "but if we move fast, we can block the closing today." "Do it," I said. She promised to file paperwork within the hour and visit me tomorrow. When I hung up, the room felt a little less suffocating. Sarah arrived that night, her face pale under the fluorescent buzz, coat still buttoned wrong from the hasty drive. I'd called her after the lawyer, told her enough to get her here without the full storm. "Mom, what's going on?" She hugged me carefully, avoiding the tubes, her shampoo smelling of lavender, like home. I patted the bed and she sat, holding my hand. Her fingers were warm, grounding. I told her then, piece by piece, the sale, the affair, the envelope still crumpled on the tray. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, a flush creeping up her neck. "Dad? With Kendra Walsh?" She stood, pacing the small space, shoes squeaking on the tile. "That woman's been sniffing around since high school reunions. How could he?" I let her vent, the words tumbling out raw and furious until she deflated back into the chair, tears streaking her mascara. "What now?" she asked, voice small. "Now we fight," I said. "I've got a lawyer. We're stopping the sale." She nodded, squeezing my hand tighter. "I'm staying, whatever you need." That night, with Sarah dozing in the recliner, her breathing soft and even, I stared out the window at the city lights twinkling like distant stars. Action felt like a lifeline pulling me from the abyss, but underneath, the hurt pulsed, a reminder that love, once fractured, leaves shards you can't always sweep away. The next morning brought Margaret Hayes, a no-nonsense woman in a gray suit, her briefcase clicking open on the table. She had papers for me to sign, affidavits, motions, and news. The injunction was filed electronically, served to Robert and Kendra's office just before closing. The sale was on hold. Robert called an hour later. I let it go to voicemail, his voice tinny through the speaker. "Ellen, what have you done? We need that money. Call me back." I deleted it without replying. Sarah handled the next part, going home to pack my things, change the locks with a locksmith friend. She reported back. The house was half packed, boxes labeled in Robert's scrawl, our wedding photo already bubble wrapped. Kendra's perfume lingered in the hallway, faint but unmistakable. Hearing that, I felt a twist in my gut, but no tears this time. Instead, a quiet determination settled in, like the first light of dawn after a long night. Over the following days, as my strength returned bit by bit, the nurses noting improved color in my cheeks, the doctor adjusting meds with nods of approval, I planned. Margaret advised on division of assets, alimony considering my health. Sarah researched support groups for cancer survivors dealing with divorce, her laptop screen glowing in the dim room as she read aloud. Robert showed up once, flowers in hand again, but security turned him away at my request. His texts pleaded, "This is a mistake, let's talk." I responded once, "Talk to my lawyer." The action wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. Piece by piece, I was taking back what was mine, my home, my dignity, my future. Word spread like wildfire in a town as small as Willow Creek. Slow at first, A whisper here, a raised eyebrow there, then blazing through the phone lines and church pews. It started with Margaret, my lawyer, serving the papers. Robert got his copy at the construction site, handed to him by a process server in front of his crew. I could picture it, the dust settling on his hard hat, the whine of saws pausing as heads turned. He called Sarah that afternoon, voice ragged, begging her to talk sense into me. She hung up without a word, her fingers white-knuckled around the phone as she told me later. Kendra was next. The injunction hit her office like a slap, freezing the escrow and alerting her broker. Real estate in our town was a tight-knit world. By evening, the gossip had leaked. Mrs. Hargrove next door called the hospital, her quavery voice on the line. "Ellen, dear, is it true about Robert and that Walsh woman?" I confirmed it quietly, no details, just enough to let the truth stand on its own. She clucked her tongue, promised a casserole when I got home. Sarah took the reins on the home front, unpacking the boxes Robert had started, her footsteps thudding up and down the stairs as she restored order. She found more, receipts tucked in his dresser for dinners in the city, a necklace that wasn't mine wrapped in tissue. She photographed everything, sent it to Margaret, then confronted Kendra directly. Not in anger, but with the calm I'd taught her. She drove to Kendra's office the next day, a sleek little building on Main Street with glass doors that reflected the autumn leaves swirling outside. Kendra was behind her desk, blonde hair pinned up, fingers tapping on a keyboard. She looked up when Sarah entered, smile faltering. "Can I help you?" "You know who I am," Sarah said, voice steady, setting the photos on the desk with a soft thud. "That's my parents' house you're trying to steal, and my father you're using to do it." Kendra's face paled under her makeup. "This is a misunderstanding. Your dad—" "My dad is a fool," Sarah cut in, not raising her voice, but the words landed like stones. "But you're the one who preyed on a family in crisis. The sale's off, and if you push it, we'll make sure every client in this town knows what you did." Kendra stammered denials, but Sarah turned and left, the bell above the door jingling brightly against the tension. By week's end, the story had rippled out. At church that Sunday, Sarah wheeled me there for a short visit, my first outing since surgery. The whispers followed us down the aisle. Pastor Jenkins pulled me aside after the service, his hand warm on my shoulder, the scent of coffee from the fellowship hall clinging to his suit. "Ellen, dear, is it true about Robert and that Walsh woman?" I confirmed it quietly, no details, just enough to let the truth stand on its own. She clucked her tongue, promised a casserole when I got home. Robert faced the brunt. His boss called him in, concerned about the drama affecting work. Crew members ribbed him at first, then grew distant when details emerged. The affair, the secret sale while his wife battled cancer. Job sites were full of family men. Betrayal like that didn't sit well. He lost a big contract the following week, word from the client that they preferred reliable teams. He texted me, "This is ruining me, Ellen. Can't we settle quietly?" I didn't respond. Justice wasn't about cruelty. It was about balance. He tipped the scales. Now they swung back.
Kendra's business took a hit too. 2 listings pulled out, clients citing personal reasons, but everyone knew. She posted a vague apology on her Facebook, something about mistakes and growth, but it only fueled the comments. Old classmates chimed in, recollections of her high school antics surfacing like old ghosts. She closed her office early one day, blinds drawn, as picketers, friends of ours from the library group, stood outside with signs. Honesty in real estate. Not aggressive, just present, their voices carrying in the crisp air. Sarah fielded calls from relatives, aunts and uncles, shocked but supportive. "Your mother's a fighter," my sister said over speakerphone, her words punctuated by the clatter of dishes in her kitchen. We hadn't been close, but this bridged the gap. She drove up the next weekend, arms full of homemade soups, the steam carrying hints of time and comfort. Through it all, I stayed in the hospital another week, gaining strength. The nurses became confidants, sharing their own stories of heartbreak over lukewarm tea in the break room. One, a young woman named Lisa with kind eyes, squeezed my hand. "You're handling this with grace, Mrs. Ellis. Not everyone does." Grace? Maybe. Or maybe it was survival, the same instinct that pushed me through chemo, one breath at a time. When I was discharged, Sarah drove me home. The house looked the same, porch swing creaking in the breeze, leaves rustling underfoot, but felt different, cleaner somehow. Robert's things were gone. He'd collected them under Sarah's supervision. No drama, just a quiet exit to a motel on the highway. That first night back, I sat in the kitchen, the clock ticking softly, a mug of chamomile warming my hands. The steam rose, carrying the faint floral scent, and I felt the weight of it all settle, not crushing, but grounding. The community had seen the truth, and in their judgment found Robert and Kendra wanting. It wasn't vengeance, it was consequence, the natural order reasserting itself. As the days turned to weeks, I began the slow work of healing. Chemo sessions continued, but now with Sarah by my side, her hand in mine during the drips, the cold fluid a reminder of battles fought. Margaret handled the divorce proceedings smoothly, assets split fairly, the house staying in my name, alimony to cover my reduced work hours. Robert signed without fight, his lawyer advising it was the wisest path. He moved to the city, closer to Kendra, but their relationship frayed under the scrutiny. Last I heard, she'd ended it citing too much baggage. I returned to the library part-time, the familiar smell of old books welcoming me like an old friend. Patrons stopped by my desk with well wishes, small gifts, a potted plant or a card with handwritten notes. Mrs. Hargrove became a daily visitor, sharing tea on the porch, her stories a gentle distraction. Sarah stayed longer than planned, helping with meals, the clink of plates in the sink a soothing routine. We talked late into nights, fire crackling in the hearth, about forgiveness, not the quick kind, but the slow release of hurt. "He was weak, Mom," she said one evening, voice soft, "but you're strong. That's what matters." I nodded, feeling a warmth spread, not from the fire, but from within. Strength wasn't absence of pain, it was moving through it, one step at a time. New beginnings crept in quietly, a support group at the community center where women like me shared laughs and tears over coffee, a garden project in the backyard, my hands in the soil, the earth cool and promising under my fingers. Even a tentative date with an old widower from church. Nothing serious, just company over pie at the diner, the taste of cinnamon lingering on my tongue. Peace came in pieces, waking without dread, laughing at Sarah's jokes, watching the sunset from the porch without loneliness clawing at me. The scar on my abdomen faded, as did the scar on my heart. Life, I learned, wasn't about perfect endings, but about rising from the ashes, wiser and whole. Months turned into a year, and with it came a rhythm I hadn't known I needed, one built on my own terms, not shared obligations. The cancer went into remission, announced on a rainy afternoon in the doctor's office, the fluorescent lights flickering slightly as if in applause. I sat there, clutching the folder of results, the paper crinkling under my fingers, and felt a quiet triumph bloom in my chest. Sarah hugged me tight, her tears dampening my shoulder, the scent of her lavender shampoo mixing with the sterile air. "We did it, Mom," she whispered, and for the first time in ages, we felt like just us, mother and daughter, unbreakable. Back home, I reclaimed the spaces Robert had tainted. I repainted the bedroom a soft blue, the kind that reminded me of summer skies, the roller leaving even strokes on the walls as paint fumes filled the air. Sarah helped, her laughter echoing when we splattered each other by accident, white flecks in our hair like snow. The porch swing got new cushions, plush and inviting, where I'd sit with a book from the library, the pages turning with a soft rustle, birds chirping in the oaks overhead.
Mrs. Hargrove joined me often, her knitting needles clicking in time with our conversation, yarns of wool unspooling like the stories we shared. Work became a sanctuary again. At the library, I curated a new section for health and wellness books, stacking them neatly on shelves that smelled of polished wood and aged paper. Patrons sought me out not just for recommendations, but for advice. Whispered questions about resilience, about starting over. "How did you do it, Ellen?" one woman asked, her voice trembling over a cup of tea in the break room. I told her the truth. One day at a time, leaning on those who lift you, letting go of what drags you down. It wasn't preachy, it was lived, etched in the lines around my eyes that deepened with each genuine smile. Forgiveness crept in unexpectedly. Not the full absolution Robert begged for in his occasional letters, envelopes arriving with postmarks from the city, his handwriting shaky, but a release for my own sake. I read one on a quiet evening, the lamp casting a warm glow on the page, words of regret blurring under unshed tears. "I was wrong, Ellen. I hope you find happiness." I folded it away. No reply needed. He'd face his own consequences. A smaller life, Kendra long gone, jobs harder to come by with his reputation trailing him like a shadow. But harboring bitterness was like carrying hot coals. I set them down, felt the cool relief wash over me.
New beginnings unfolded gently. Sarah introduced me to online classes, watercolor painting, something I'd always dreamed of that never pursued. The brushes dipped in pigment, colors bleeding across paper, and the kitchen, the sink running as I rinsed them clean. My first piece, a simple landscape of our backyard garden, hung on the wall, framed with pride. And then there was Tom, the widower from church, with his gentle eyes and stories of his late wife. Our dates were simple: walks in the park, leaves crunching underfoot, or coffee at the diner, steam rising from mugs as we talked about books and life. No rush, no pressure, just companionship that warmed the empty spaces without filling them forcefully. Sarah moved back to the city eventually, her teaching job calling, but our bond was stronger. Calls turning into video chats where I'd see her apartment cluttered with student papers, her face lit by the screen. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she'd say, and I'd feel it echo in my heart. Strength, I realized, wasn't in the absence of scars, but in how they healed. Faint lines telling a story of survival. The house, once a symbol of loss, became my haven again. The creak of the floorboards, a familiar song, the kitchen filled with the aroma of apple pies baked for no reason but joy. Life moved forward, not flawless, but mine, rich with lessons on trust, resilience, and the quiet power of standing alone. And here we are, my dear friends, sitting together in the quiet after the storm. I'm on that same porch swing tonight, the one Robert and I used to share on summer evenings. The chains creak softly, the way they always have, and the air smells of cut grass and the last of the honeysuckle. There's a quilt over my knees, a cup of chamomile cooling on the little table beside me, and the sky is that deep indigo that comes just before the stars decide to show themselves. The house is mine again, truly mine, paid for twice over, once with a mortgage, once with heartache. And yet, when I walk through the rooms now, I don't feel the weight of what was taken. I feel the lightness of what I kept. My dignity, my daughter's love, my health, my name on the deed, my peace. I learned something I wish I'd never had to learn, that the person who rocks you to sleep for 30 years can still be capable of selling the bed out from under you when fear and weakness whisper in his ear. And I learned something even more precious, that the same woman who was too weak to stand after surgery can still find the strength to stand up for herself when everything she loves is on the line.
Betrayal doesn't always come with shouting and slammed doors. Sometimes it comes wearing the same cologne, bringing the same wilted flowers, speaking in the same tired voice that once said, "I love you forever." And healing doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes in the quiet click of a lawyer's pen, in the fierce hug of a daughter, in the first morning you wake up and realize the ache in your chest has turned from sharp to tender, and tender can be lived with. I forgave Robert in the end, not for his sake. He'll carry his choices the rest of his days. I forgave him for mine, so bitterness wouldn't rent space in a heart that still has so much living to do. If you're watching this and you're in the middle of your own storm, if someone you trusted has pulled the ground from under you, hear me gently. You are not the illness they used as an excuse. You are not the signature they tried to forge. You are not the house they tried to sell. You are the woman who woke up in that hospital bed and chose to fight for herself when no one else would. You are stronger than the moment you feel weakest. You are allowed to protect what is yours. You are allowed to close the door, change the locks, repaint the walls, and sit on your own porch under your own stars. And one day, when the swing creaks and the night air smells like honeysuckle again, you'll realize the storm didn't destroy you. It cleared the way for a quieter, braver, truer life than you ever thought possible. So tell me, sweet souls, if you had been lying in that hospital bed, tubes in your arm, house slipping away, what would you have done? Would you have signed the papers, or would you have picked up the phone and called the lawyer? Leave it in the comments. I read every single one, and I hold every one of your stories close to my heart. Thank you for sitting with me tonight. If this touched you, if it gave you even a flicker of courage, share it with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. And until the next time the porch light is on and the tea is warm, take care of your hearts. This is Auntie Mara's Echoes saying good night.